Well, I don't know about all of you, but I am totally psyched about this conference. I mean, yeah! So I am one of a vanishing few who have been to all of the Ruby conferences. I don't know exactly how many there are of us left. Has anyone counted yet? Who here has been to all the Ruby conferences? Is there anyone in here? See, you're stuck with me. So I can tell you whatever I want to about the past Ruby conferences, and it's going to be really hard for you to check up. The other interesting thing is that I've actually spoken at all the Ruby conferences, which just completely blows my mind. They keep inviting me back. But I'm excited to be able to do it once again. So this afternoon, we're going to talk about why camping matters. So why does camping matter? Well, every talk needs a metaphor. And our metaphor this afternoon is going to be the bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. And, of course, we start off with bacon. Well, what does bacon make us think of? Bacon makes us think of camping's creator. What is camping in the first place? Well, as we look at the bacon portion of this, camping is a 4K micro framework. How many of you have heard of camping? And I'm not talking about with a tent. Okay, how many of you have actually used camping for more than 10 minutes? Okay, that's a pretty good smattering. But I'm not going to abandon my live coding because most of you won't be bored when I'm doing it. So camping was created by Why the Lucky Stiff. Why the Lucky Stiff is Ruby's mad genius, right? He's the guy that comes up with the offbeat things that make us all go, huh? And then we go, cool. And of course, Chunky Bacon is from Why's Poignant Guide. So, camping. Here's the diagram that Why put out when he released camping. Now you'll notice, this is highly technical. Right? So the request is not tangible, much as a dream aloft. And if you can't read this, you can go and find it on the web. And, camping does have a lot to do. We insert it into the trailer brain. So instead of trying to explain this diagram to you, I'm instead just going to do some live coding, because I want to dive right in and show you camping. And as we're coding, I'm going to sort of explain it to you and explain some of the philosophy behind it as well. So let's do this. Live coding is always fun at a conference. Can't beat it for excitement. All right. So, let's see. And so the first thing that you'll notice about camping is that a camping app goes in one file. So we're going to start out, and we're just going to say camping goes blog, because we have to do a blog, right? I mean, the canonical Rails screencast is a blog, so we'll do a blog. So we just start off by telling camping we're creating a blog application in this file. It's going to set everything up for us, and then we can get started. So what's the first thing you do anytime you encounter something new? Well, of course, you do hello world. So we're going to do controllers. Oops. Let's see. Like I said, live coding, very exciting. So camping is your typical, as far as the concepts go, it's MVC. So you have model, view, and controller. We're just going to start with controllers. We're going to give ourselves an index controller. We're going to route that index controller to the root of our app. And then we're going to handle gets. And we're just going to say, hello, RubyConf. Okay? I'm going to save that. I'm going to switch over here. This is blog.rb, saved in my temp directory. And I'm just going to go camping blog.rb. Okay, now we have a camping app up on 3301. We're going to switch over here, and we're going to go to localhost 3301. Hello, RubyConf. So, your first camping app ever, if it is your first camping app ever, is up and running already. And we have how many lines of code? And of course, the framework doesn't contribute much more. As I said, camping is a 4K micro framework. The whole framework fits into 4K. Now, do not read the 4K version of the framework. I do not want to be responsible for any brain damage. Instead, read Camping Unabridged, which has all the comments in line. And I have to say, that Adam Keyes poster in the back is like freaking me out. If you haven't seen that, just turn around and look at it and then pay attention to me again. I keep looking back there and doing a double take. Okay. So, now, I have your attention again. So we have an index now, but we're creating a blog. We're not doing Hello World. Need to get serious here. So the first thing we might want to do with a blog is add a post. So let's go ahead and add a link. Well, you know, it is MVC. So we have a C. We might want a view as well. We have a controller. So let's go ahead and use a view for this. So we're going to say render index, and then we're going to go down here and we're going to open up our views. Let's see. So, and we're just going to def index. And then in index, we're going to start coding. Now, one of the things I like about camping, and some people don't like this, but I like it because I like to be able to stay in the same conceptual framework when I'm doing camping. And I can do that because camping uses Markaby for its views, which is basically, remember when Jen was talking about Builder? Markaby is basically taking that same Builder concept and applying it to HTML specifically. So I just come in here and I say add, we'll just say add post, and we'll route that to add. So R, again, is our routing method. We use it up here when we declared our controller as well. And it's going to generate that URL for me to get to the add controller, which doesn't exist yet. So we'll go ahead and add. And you'll notice I'm going to route it to /add. And I'm just going to save that for now. And we're going to go over here, and we're going to hit refresh. Camping also auto-reloads your code for you in almost all cases, so you don't have to worry about going out and killing the server. If we hit add post, we get nothing because we didn't actually do anything in add yet. So now we're going to dive here into add, and we're going to say get, and we're just going to say render add. So far, controller methods are pretty simple then. So let's go ahead and def add, and we just want a form for add. I really like to, when I'm doing a camping app, a lot of times I'm doing it because I'm trying to get my head around the concepts in an app, not necessarily the design or the niceties. And so I'm going to dive a lot of times right down and just eliminate anything not necessary. So I'm just going to give myself a form. I don't care about other markup, etc. The only thing I do is a field set because I'm pedantic that way. Okay, so what should a blog have? It should have a title, and we'll just do an input with a name of title, and then we'll have a body, and we'll have a text area with a name of body, and then we'll just have an input type, submit. So now if we go over here and hit refresh, boom, there is our blog posting form. And so now we can go in and we can post something. So let's say new RubyConf. We'll redo our hello world here. Okay. Oh, nothing happened, right? Because we didn't actually implement post yet. So we'll just drop over here into add. Now, everything when you actually post, or anytime parameters are coming in, they get dumped into input. So what I'm going to do first is I'm actually just going to have this dump out input and spec so you can see what's coming in, right? So that's what's coming in. We have a hash of our parameters, pretty straightforward. So all I want to do in post is I just want to create a post, right? So I'm just going to say post create at input. And then I'm going to redirect to index. Now, if I go over and run that, right, boom, oh, there is no post. Well, it's time to talk about the M. So we have the controller, we have the view. Now let's actually give ourselves some models. So we're going to say blog models. Now, camping uses active record under the covers for models. That part is not crammed into 4K. But it's actually pretty sweet because if you have some familiarity with active record already, you can get started pretty quickly. And I think active record is the most separable and most interesting separate piece of Rails. So, and also, it is interesting why I described camping as a white blood cell in the vein of Rails. And I'm not quite sure exactly what that means, but you can ponder it. So we're just going to create ourselves a post, and we even put the migrations in the same file. So create post extends v1, and we're going to say def self.up, and we're going to create table. Now, there's only one other step we have to do, and that is we have to make sure that camping actually runs the migrations. So we just go here and we just say def blog.create. So if we refresh this, oh, cool, we got an error, live coding, yay. I did something stupid. Oh, table name, right. And I wanted to explain that to you anyhow. So you'll notice that the table name is blog_post. The idea with camping is that you have lots of small apps that are running in the same server and they interact. But one part of that is that it namespaces the tables for the apps. So you just, it's namespaced under your app's name. So you said camping goes blog, so it puts all your models under blog_whatever. The only place you'll really have to deal with this is A, when you're creating the table, and B, if you actually have another app that wants to interact with those tables. Potentially, although you can actually just access that app's models and it figures it out for you. So now, if we try this again. Okay, so let's try this. Yeah, that. And, okay, so it dumped this back on the index. Wouldn't it be nice to know if it actually posted? So we just pop back up into index. Let's actually go here first into our controller. Right? So we've got all the posts, and then we're going to come over here, and we're just going to say post.each. And we're going to just h2 e.title, p e.body, h. Boom. So we're now posting to our blog. Pretty spiffy, pretty quick, pretty easy to get going. Now, wouldn't it be nice to actually have a permalink? So let's permalink. Methods, any view methods that you call that are not prefixed with an underscore. So all I'm going to do here is do my typical HTML stuff, and then I'll do a head, and I'll do a title, and I'll do a body, and do an H1 log, and we will self field. Boom. So you can see the title showed up. If we were to look at the source, which we could, but you wouldn't be able to read it because it's so small, the font's so small, it has HTML and all that kind of good stuff wrapped around it. So you don't have to duplicate that in every method. Again, if you want another layout, you might want another application. You create another application, it sits next to this application, they interact, and it can have its own layout. So now we have that. The other thing that we might want today is to basically be able to comment, right? That would be kind of cool. So if we go down here, when we're viewing a post, we can give ourselves another form, and we're going to, we're just going to have a body, or we'll call it comment. And a lot of times, interestingly enough, I'm not doing it here because, anyhow, I will do everything in lowercase when I'm doing a camping app because the point is not that it looks pretty. The point is that I've explored the concepts. So a lot of times I'll do all my text in my app lowercase because it says this is exploring the concepts. This is not looking pretty. So this is actually going to be a text area name, body, and an input. So, now that form, where's the form going to go? Well, we want it to be a post, and we want it to go to the comments controller, and we're going to pass in the post ID so that because it's a comment on that post. So the comments controller doesn't exist yet, so we'll just pop up here and add it. Notice again, I'm capturing, and you can capture other things. It doesn't have to be a number. It could be text or whatever, and it's really nice because then you can pass it in various places. Okay, so, except I don't want to get, I want to post. Right? So let's just go over and see what happens if we go in here. Now we have our comment, and we can say, this is a great post. And nothing happens. Beautiful. Okay, so now we're actually going to say post.findID, post comments, create, at input, and redirect. Redirect view ID. So that's not going to work, right? If we go over and we actually try to do that, it's going to blow up all over the place because it doesn't know what a comment is, what post.comments is. So it's really cinchy to add, though, right? We just come down here. Just going to go. Wow, there's a lot of weird typos you can do with that. Okay, so has many comments, and comment extends base, and then I'm just going to create it. Create comments, v2, self.up, table. Oh, name. Yep. Okay, log comments. And then I'm just going to say t.column post ID. No. Maybe if I upgraded Rails, but I'm not doing that before my presentation. Text. So now, if we hit refresh, it goes and creates, and our comment's not showing up. Well, that's easily fixed. We just go up into view, and we say post.comments.each, and we just something like that. Sweet. So we have commenting. Log, commenting. I mean, wow. I'm impressed with myself. Okay, so that's camping. It's really as simple as that. There's more stuff you can do. There's definitely things that I did not show you. Is that coming back up? Hopefully. Yeah, it's blank. So that's camping. And I wanted to give you a dive down into camping for real so you could really see it and get a visceral feeling for this is something that you could do. And I think that's important, and we're going to get to that in a second. But first, to make this a great talk, I want to break a few eggs. I think good talks break eggs. And I'll preface my egg breaking by saying, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to contrast Rails and camping. And I'm going to, it might sound like I'm harshing on Rails, but I like Rails. I love Rails. I make money on Rails, and I'm not just saying I like Rails because I make money because of Rails. I really do like Rails. I think it solves some really great problems. But at the same time, it makes a lot of sense to compare these two and think about some of the differences. So Rails is all about convention over configuration, right? It's do things our way and you don't have to configure things, and we won't even really a lot of times let you configure things. You just stick with a convention. And that's really cool when you're coming onto a new project. But sometimes what you really want is minimalism, and that's camping's approach. There is no configuration because there's like nothing to configure. So Rails also is a very opinionated framework. And as long as you agree with David's opinions in a particular point in time, that's great. And a lot of times I do agree with David's opinions. But sometimes what I really want is something wacky, right? Camping isn't so much opinionated as it is just strange. But that's cool, because it makes me think different. And wacky's cool because Rails is boring. David Heinemeier Hansson said Rails is boring, right? And it's boring because it lets you just focus on what you need, the business problem that you're trying to solve, instead of focusing on the tech. And that's really cool when what you want to do is just solve a business problem. But Rails is boring. Camping is offbeat, right? It's just like different. It yanks you out of the way that you've been thinking and why stuff in general does. Rails is just like always, but better. And it is just like always, but better. I mean, it's MVC, and of course camping's MVC too, but Rails is, it's not inventing any great new paradigm. Seaside does some really different stuff. But Rails is just like always, but better. Camping is more flexible than a wet noodle. Mostly because there's just not very much there. So you have to write your own, and you can refactor your own code however you want to. But it's highly flexible, and that's pretty sweet. Rails has helpers for everybody. Right? I mean, it's got, and some of them are even being pulled out, but there's still a lot of helpers in there. There's helpers for, you notice I was creating my input tags on my own. You can do that. Did you know? But no, and it's cool when you're solving the boring business problem or the exciting business problem, and you don't want to worry about the boring tech. It's really cool to have all those helpers, and it helps a lot to accelerate development. Camping is do-it-yourself, right? It's the home improvement store to Rails being the remodelers that you contract out to. It's just go in, grab some stuff, and start building it yourself. And one of the things I love about it is it just gets you down into Ruby, right? It's not this Rails that's sitting on top and everybody's like, how do I learn Rails? It's Ruby. Yeah, Ruby is cool, and you can do all kinds of cool stuff with it, and you could write something like Rails if you really put your mind to it. And so really thinking about Ruby and not just Rails is pretty sweet. Rails is daunting to hack on. You can do it, and I would encourage you to do it. I think it's a great learning experience, and I think it's great for the community. But it is daunting. Like, even checking it out takes a while. There's a lot of code there. And you can sort of hack on one section, but you're probably not going to be able to just jump in and hack on any section that you want to without sort of learning. Camping is eminently hackable, and mostly because all you're going to be hacking is your own code. But even if you want to dive down, why does some crazy metaprogramming stuff, and there's a whole bunch of one-letter variable names and stuff in camping, but there's like not very much code. So you can grok the crazy stuff that he's doing, and you can get in there and propose changes and hook into it and do different things with it. It is eminently hackable. Rails encourages conformance, which is cool when you're jumping in onto somebody else's project. You just want to pick it up and go with it. Camping encourages experimentation, which is what we need to do a lot of times when we're playing around with a concept. Rails' encouragement of conformance can hurt you in some situations if you treat it as a sledgehammer that you use everywhere. All right, so that's camping. That's we have the bacon, we have the cheese, or the eggs, now the cheese. So let's stick this talk together. This really starts, like this whole talk, the genesis for this talk is sort of a learning experience that I had. And that was, back in the day. But no, I mean, I've come to all the Ruby comps, and back when I was originally coming to Ruby comps, I was doing a lot of hacking. Like, I was like playing around with things, half-built files, all over my half-built projects, all over my hard drive, that sort of stuff. But as Ruby has gained ground, and as I've been able to get paid to do Ruby, and that was really sweet, but then I sort of took on the Terralium thing and started subcontracting out work and wasn't actually billing out work anymore. And initially that was cool. I mean, I do a lot of sales and marketing now. I never, ever, ever would have thought that I would enjoy it, but I actually do. But at the same time, that's all I was doing. And it started to get dry and it started to get boring. And the realization I came to by way of John Long. So John Long throws out this thing called FeedChamp, which is a planet written in camping. If you know what a planet is, it's basically an RSS aggregator. So it takes a whole bunch of RSS feeds and spits out a combined RSS feed. So John released FeedChamp, and he's like, you should set this up for Terralium. So I did, and quickly found out that RSS is a hairy mess. And as I added different feeds in, it broke 9 ways from Tuesday. And so I had to get in there and actually hack on it to get it working. And you know what? It was really fun. It's like, wow, this is like good stuff. And after that, a while, I started to realize that a lot of the reason that other things were getting lackluster was because there was a component of myself that I was not nurturing. And that's the creative component, right? I also have this business component, but if I neglect the internal creative piece of me, then the rest of me suffers as well. So, why does camping matter? Well, it's not just why does camping matter. It's why does camping and Merb and Nitro and Og and Ambition and Shoes and Rubinius and Borges and Iowa and Webby and any other cool framework or tool and it doesn't even have to be Ruby, right? It's why Erlang matters, is because what we need to do is we need to feed our inner hacker. Bacon, egg, and cheese, get it? So we need to feed the inner hacker. We've got to come back to this. I found that I had to come back to this and make sure that I was feeding myself and getting the nutrition that I needed for my inner hacker. Now, there's 3 pieces, I think, or that I've come up with that are important when you're feeding your inner hacker. 3 things that are important about the food that you ingest. First, it needs to be regular. You need regular nourishment for your inner hacker. An example of this, I think, is actually taken from a different domain. A guy named Richard Gabriel, who some of you may have heard of, he is a software developer, but also an educator. But one of the things he did was he went and got his MFA in poetry. And during the course of doing that, one of the things that he did was he wrote a poem every single day for a year. And he said that he got amazing insights into poetry that he never would have had, say, if he'd been working on an epic poem for the whole time or if he'd just been reading poetry. He was creating every single day. And so I think that as we feed our inner hacker, we need to come to that point. We need to really work to, have the hack a day. I mean, so audience participation time. What hacks have you guys done recently? Doesn't have to be anything big. I'd almost prefer small things. And I'm not just talking Ruby. What kind of hacks do we have? I mean, what have you guys been doing? What?
A Merb app to download stuff from my TiVo.
Merb app for TiVo?
Box plots for Ruby performance.
Box plots? Who else?
Automated blogger abuse reports.
Blogger abuse reports? Automated? Sweet. What else?
S3 back document database in Ruby.
S3 back document database in Ruby.
Name drops in JavaScript.
Name drops in JavaScript. What? Oh. So there's all these like cool things going on, and we need those regular things. You know, when I was first preparing this talk, I actually lost like an hour or two in the morning because I was hacking up a CSS style sheet to make it so that Mailplane on my Mac would stop showing the spam count because it was distracting me. So I went in and grabbed the Gmail source code enough to figure out where that was coming from and hide it, and it took me an hour or two. But it was just like a really cool hack. It doesn't have to be anything complex or convoluted or awe-inspiring. A lot of times it's just figuring out a little way to make your day better. So regular. The second thing that I think we need in our hacker diet is we need varied nourishment. We need a variety of foods. When you're eating the same thing day in and day out, it gets really old really fast. And so making sure that you're doing different things, that you're trying different things. That was, I think, part of the revelation of camping to me. It's like, Rails is sweet. I love Rails. But camping is really cool too, and it gets you thinking completely differently. And you can actually take that back to what you're doing with Rails. So, number 3. I think that the nourishment that you provide to your inner hacker needs to be appealing as well. You need to go after those things that you're passionate about. If you're doing Rails day in and day out, I mean, when I first started doing Rails, I was really passionate about it. I mean, it was like I wanted to eat it and breathe it and live it. Over time, I still really like Rails. But, you know, the passions move on, and I think in a room like this, the kind of people that we tend to be, we tend to move and our interests move. And you need to move with your interests to some extent, I think. Make sure that you're doing things that are really appealing to you. And the other cool thing about doing that is I think that you'll find that as you pursue your passions, other people will also find themselves very interested in what you're doing. And so next year at RubyConf, we'll be talking about the cool things that you decided to do this next year when you pursued your passions. So regular, varied, and appealing. And I think what it all boils down to is that focus is good. Like being focused on Rails app development and getting really good at it, that is great. It's a really good skill to have. But learning, you have to balance it with learning. You have to make sure that you're still learning and growing and not get sidetracked. I mean, for me, it was almost like I sort of wasn't developing. But for a lot of you, I'm guessing it might not be that you're not developing. It's that you're only like developing the same kinds of things. And so make sure that you get that learning in, that you branch out and do other things, because it's going to increase your skills where you're at as well. Okay. The biscuit. We have bacon, we have egg, we have cheese. Put it all together with a biscuit. So I've just given you a very personal challenge. The biscuit is about talking about the community. What does this mean to us as a community, as the Ruby community? I think it's very, very important. And to kind of show you that, I want to ask, so this is completely unscripted. I have no earthly idea what you guys are going to do. But I am curious. So, room full of programmers, this might be a little complex, but I want everybody who has both been to a RailsConf and to a full RubyConf, so this one doesn't count, it has to be one of the past ones. You've been to both of those. I want you to raise your hand and keep it up. Okay. Now, out of you, if you preferred RailsConf to RubyConf, I want you to drop your hand. If you preferred RailsConf to RubyConf, or to put it another way, if you preferred your experience at RailsConf to your experience at RubyConf, drop your hand. Okay, cool. Nobody dropped their hand. Maybe one person did. And I'll talk to them afterwards. No, why is it that if you sample the subset of people that have been to both conferences, the people who have been to both overwhelmingly prefer RubyConf? But I first heard this at RailsConf. I first heard this from guys who'd been to RubyConf and were at RailsConf. I'm selecting from the set of both. I'm not selecting just from people who are going to RubyConf. I think it is a self-selecting group. There's no doubt about that. But why is it self-select? What is it? So, I want to compare and contrast now. Let's do this again, but we're going to do it with RubyConf and RailsConf. The question is, why is it's not the organizers, right? And I say that for two reasons. One, I like the organizers, and I think they're cool guys, and I want them, to let me come to next year's conference. The second one is that a lot of the organizers are the same people, so it's not the organizers. There's something else going on here. So RubyConf is small, right? It's a smaller conference. It's bigger now than it was when I first came, right? It was like 30 some odd people in 2001, but it's still a small conference, especially compared to RailsConf, right? RailsConf is the big guy. It's like over 3 times as large as this conference. RubyConf is the Hobbyist conference. Then over there in the next room, now that you're all stuck in this room, I can tell you this, he's like talking about electronic stuff, right? He's a hobbyist. He doesn't get paid to do that. RailsConf is the professional conference. I mean, if you looked at RubyConf and RailsConf, I really believe this is a gut feeling, but I really believe that you'd find a much larger percentage of those who come to RailsConf there's some compensation there from their company as far as doing that. Versus RubyConf, I really believe there are a lot more people here who chose to fund this out of their own funds and come of their own volition because they're hobbyists. They enjoy Ruby and they think it's really cool. And I can tell you that was like really true back at the beginning of RubyConf. I really think this is like an overloaded word. Somebody said when I did this, be careful about this. I just mean minority in the sense that I think RubyConf is a minority conference sort of getting back to that hobbyist feel, getting back to the fact that the self-selecting set of people that want to come to a RubyConf, out of all people that have ever seen or heard of Ruby, is a distinct minority. I think that RailsConf is more of a conference for the masses. I think you have a lot more general appeal to RailsConf to a lot of people, and that's fine. I mean, I enjoyed a lot of things about RailsConf. I think, again, I'm not trying to get down on it too much. I'm just trying to draw out some differences here. I really think RubyConf is a hackers conference. I bet the overall code output, if you factor in the number of people, is both more. There's more code that happens this weekend, and there's also higher quality code that comes out this weekend. I truly believe that. I think, and some of that's because I think RailsConf is a pragmatist conference. It's how do we solve those business problems, those boring business problems, which is not boring business problems. How do we solve the exciting business problems with the boring technology? And so, it's much more pragmatic. It's much more about getting at the, solving business stuff as opposed to the hacker culture. Now, here's the flip side of this, right? I said it's a minority conference, but the people at RubyConf, I think, are much more generalist. There's a lot more people here whose tastes are varied and who are interested in a lot of things. I mean, where did I first hear about Erlang? At RubyConf, of course. I mean, that makes so much sense, but it's because a lot of people, such as Rich Kelmer, are interested in a lot of general things in tech versus something like RailsConf, where you have a decent number of the people there who are more specialist, right? It's the web. I mean, it's going to be a specialist conference. It's the web. It's a web framework. You're not going to talk about like WX Ruby coding at RailsConf, which is fine. RubyConf is broad. The focus is broad. RailsConf is focused. It's very honed in. Now, here's why I think this matters a lot. I think we need both a lot. I think they're both really, really important. And here's why. I think that Ruby and RubyConf in general provide the vitality to this community. I think that Rails and RailsConf provide momentum. I mean, how many people in this room would really be even here at all or be paid to do Ruby of some sort, if not for Rails. And how wonderful is that? I am thrilled to be able to be involved in Ruby coding day in and day out because of Rails. If you look at different communities, I think you see this, the importance of these two sides of the coin, as it were. I mean, just look at Ruby back when I got involved back in 2001. It was a very vital community. I really believe that. It was vibrant. There was a lot of interesting stuff going on. But it did not have momentum. Rails comes along and grants momentum. It brings momentum to the Ruby train. And all of a sudden it spreads and expands to encompass more people and to draw in more of the people that will make Ruby better as well as Rails. So that momentum was really important to Ruby and even to Ruby itself, not just to Rails. On the flip side, my personal opinion is that I feel like Java has this sewn up, but I feel like it's losing this. And to go with something that's perhaps less controversial, COBOL. Right? There's no vitality there. But it has lots of momentum. It's still used all over the place, but that's just because it's still rolling. And so why I think that this idea of us feeding our inner hacker is so critical, and why RubyConf is a super important conference, as is RailsConf, is because the vitality for this community, the thing that's going to allow me to continue to do Ruby into the future is, and enjoy it, right? That's the key. I could do COBOL if I wanted to, enjoy it not so much. So the key thing is that we keep that vitality, and that happens on an individual level by us continuing to explore and to grow and to learn. The momentum is building and will continue to build if we keep things vital. COBOL has momentum, but that momentum slows down more and more every year. And the same will happen with Ruby. If we lose vitality, the momentum will peak off and it will start to go down. And all those people who said Ruby's just a fad will be right, and we don't want that to happen for multiple reasons. So vitality and momentum, both very critical components, I think, on a personal level, and also very critical components on a community level. So my charge to you is that you would go hack something and do something really cool, just as Why the Lucky Stiff has done for us in camping, that I can go out and play with and learn something from. That we all go out and we pay attention not just to the wonderful momentum that Ruby and Rails are gaining, but we also pay attention to the vitality, the life of our community and of our language. So, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Obi.
So why does camping matter? Do you use camping production systems, and if you do, how do you test it?
That, both very good questions. I'm glad somebody brought the testing up. So a lot of times I just use camping for prototyping. And one of the things that I like is the quick cycle that I can get as far as just getting things up on the screen and interacting with them. So a lot of times I'm not testing that. There's currently a camping testing framework called Mosquito, which works pretty well. It sits on top of Test Unit. But the only thing I don't like about Mosquito is that you don't write the tests in the same file. I mean, I need to write my camping test in the same file. So I have a half-baked hack called Deet. No attack on Mosquito in particular. No attack on Mosquito in particular, but I'd rather kill bugs than attract them. And you write the test in the file in a more camping-esque manner. It's half-baked, though, right? It's my hack that's like sitting half done in my thing, so you can't just go out and download it. I do hope to eventually release that, but being a hacker, who knows? So yes, and as far as using it in production systems, it runs in production. It runs our Terralian planet in production, and it just cranks along. We're not currently using it. I mean, our production, our client apps are done in Rails. Now, the one place that I think that it might have a real significant good use in production would be intranet type things, where you just want to take some data and get it up and interact with it really, really quickly. And you want to focus on the interactions again and not so much on, the look and feel. You want to figure out how to munch the data, or you just need a quick very quick. So.
Would you call this talk Why Matters, except it wouldn't have sounded right? What he's doing really that...
It is a lot of what he's doing. I really feel like Why has probably more single-handedly than any other person in the community encouraged all of us to hack more. Because he continually throws out projects out there that just make you want to go, ooh, I want to take this shiny wrapper off. So, yes, I think Why does matter.
Speaking of vitality in the community and hacking, I saw a whole bunch of sort of our top level people playing Werewolf for 3 or 4 hours last night instead of hacking, and I'm worried.
But
I'm sad. They're hacking about how to lie.
Well, the only counterpoint I will give to that, as someone who played 2 games of Werewolf last night, is that hacking something isn't just about hacking code necessarily. And the interesting thing I find about Werewolf is a lot of it's about hacking people, which a lot of software developers could get better at, honestly. Anybody else?
He's sowing confusion. He's the werewolf.
An observation on Werewolf and the Ruby community.
Yep.
One of the nice things about the Ruby community is that we have a tendency
Stand up and show off the shirt.
I'm sorry?
Stand up and show off the shirt.
Oh, show off the shirt. One of the nice things about the Ruby community is we have a tendency not to attack users of other languages who come and visit us. I have a feeling, I came to this conclusion this morning, that maybe part of the reason is that we let Werewolf basically vent that desire.
So instead of going after Python, we just go after our fellow Rubyists.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. It's interesting. When I gave this at the local Ruby Brigade, I got lots of camping questions afterwards, which is cool. Yeah.
Not knowing camping very much, but does camping also do style sheets, cascade?
So, yes, there's various ways that you can basically dump your style sheet right into your file. You can also just like camping, it sits on top of a web server, it can sit on top of Mongrel or WebRick or whatever, and it can serve up static files, and you can just link to those. So yes, there's a lot of options. Again, it comes back to a lot of times you're going out on the wiki and finding something that somebody's done, and copying, pasting it, and munging it around, as opposed to Rails, which says, here's where you put your style sheets, etc. But it gets you thinking about stuff. Yes?
Since camping encourages you to have multiple small applications sharing a database, are there any kinds of best practices that you can watch out for when you're doing that?
That's a good question. I personally don't know of any. I mean, for instance, you can use your router to basically link back and forth between the applications. They're like aware of each other to an extent. Honestly, I haven't done that many multi-app camping setups. I'd like to do more. And I haven't seen that many either. So go out and hack that, and please publish the best practices.
A couple questions. First is, how tied is camping to active record as opposed to another format?
How tied is camping to active record? There's not very much code there, and actually the DB is loaded up separately, so I would say not very. And I would be interested in other possibilities for that, definitely, like SQL and stuff.
The second is, how does camping handle content types or formats for RESTful stuff?
RESTful stuff is something that you hack on top, and there's a few different ones. Like there's one called REST stop. I think there was another one that was like bedroll or something. So basically, yeah, you sort of build that on top, and it does decent. I found, well, Rails, again, it comes back to Rails opinionatedness. I expected something to behave a certain way because that's how that's how Rails does it. But then it turns out that it's not necessarily even has to behave that way. So But again, it's something you can definitely hack on top of camping and mess around with. And I have a little bit. It's pretty fun. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. Go hack something.